Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we are going to focus about United States or USA. In United States, a state is a constituent political entity of which there are 50, both together in a political union. Each state holds governmental jurisdiction over a separate and defined geographic territory where it shares its sovereignty with the federal government. Due to the shared sovereignty, Americans are citizens both of federal republic and the state in which they reside or stay. State citizenship and residence are flexible, and no government approval is required to move between states, except the person is restricted by certain types of court order, such as paroled convicts and child of divorced spouses who are sharing custody. Governments in the USA are allocated power by the people of each respective state through their individual state constitution, or are grounded in republican principles. This is being required by federal constitution of each provided for a government consisting of three branches. Each has separate and independent powers: executive, legislature, and judicial. States are divided into counties or county equivalent, which may be assigned some local governmental authority but are not sovereign. County and or sub or county equivalent structure varies widely by state, and the state also create other local governments. States like U States, unlike USA territories, possess many powers and rights under the states. Under United States Constitution, states and their citizens are represented in the United States Congress, a bicameral legislature consisting of Senate and the House of Representatives. Each state is also entitled to select a number of electors equal to the total number of representatives and senators for that state to vote in the electoral college, the body that directs elects to the President of the United States. Additionally, each state has the opportunity to ratify constitution amendments, and with the consent of Congress, two or more states may enter into interstate compacts with another. The policy power of each state is also organized. Historically, the task of local enforcement, public education, public health, interstate commerce regulation, and local transportation and infrastructure, in addition to the local, state, and federal elections, have generally been considered the primary state responsibilities, although all these now have significantly federal funding and regulation as well. Over time, the Constitution has been amended, and the interpretation and application of provisions have changed. The general tendencies have been towards centralization and incorporation, with the federal government playing a much larger role than it once did. There is a counting debate over states' rights, which concern the extent and nature of states' power and sovereignty in relation to the federal government and rights of individuals. The Constitution grants the Congress the authority to admit new states into the Union. Since the establishment of the United States in 1776 by 13 colonies, the number of states have expanded from origin 13 to 50. Each new state has been admitted on an equal footing with existing states. While the Constitution does not explicitly discussed the issue of whether states have the power to secede from union. Shortly after Civil War, the USA Supreme Court in Texas v. White held that a state cannot unilaterally do so. Lists the 50 USA states in alphabetical order alongside with each flag. We have Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Connecticut, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. The background: the 13 original states came into existence in July 1776 during the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, as the successor of the 13th colony upon agreeing to the re-resolution and signing the United States Declaration of Independence. Prior to these events, each state had been a British colony. Each then joined the first Union of States between 1777 and 1781. Upon ratifying the Article of Confederation, the first USA Constitution. Also during this period, the newly independent states developed their own individual state constitutions, among the earliest written constitutions in the world. Although different in details, these state constitutions shared features that would be important in American constitutional order. They were republican in form and separated by the power among three branches, most held by Camel legislature and contained statement of or a Bill of Rights later from 1987 to 1790. Each of states also ratified a new federal frame of government in the Constitution of the United States. In addition to the states, the USA Constitution elaborates concepts of federalism. Governments under USA Constitutional law, the 50 individual states and the United States are a whole. Under USA Constitutional law, the 50 individual states and the United States as a whole are each sovereign jurisdictions. The states are not administrative divisions of the country. The 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution reserves the states or the people or power of government not delegated to the federal government. Consequently, each of 50 states reserves the right to organize in its individual government in any way within broad parameters set by USA Constitution and the Republican guaranteed forced by Congress, deemed appropriate by its people, and to exercise all powers of government not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution. A state, unlike the federal government, has an eliminated police power. That's the right to generally make all necessary laws for the fair will of its people. As a result, while the governments of the various states share many similar features, they often vary greatly with regard to form and substance. No two state governments are identical. Constitutions. The government of each state is structured in accordance with its individual constitution. Many of these documents are more detailed and more elaborate than their federal counterpart. The Constitution of Alabama, for example, contains 300 10,020 296 words, more than 40 times as many as USA Constitution. In practice, each state has adopted a three-branch form of government: executive, legislative, and judicial, even though doing so has never been required. Area, Array on In American history, four state governments differentiate themselves from others in their first constitution by choosing to self-identify as a commonwealth rather than states. Virginia in 1776, Pennsylvania in 1777, Massachusetts in 1780, and Kentucky in 1782. Consequently, consequently, while these four are states like the other states, is formally a commonwealth because the term is contained in its constitution. The term commonwealth, which refers to a state in which the supreme power is vested in the people, was first used in Virginia during interregnum in 1649 to 1660 period between the reign of Charles I and Charles II, during which Parliament Oliver Cromwell as Lord Protector established a republican government known as Commonwealth of England. Virginia became a royal colony again in 1660, and the word was dropped from the full title. It went unused until reintroduced in 1776. Executive. In each state, the chief executive is called the governor, who serves as both head of state and head of the government. All governors are chosen by direct election. The governors may approve or veto bills passed by state legislature as well as recommend and work for passage of bills, usually supported by political party. In 44 states, governors have line item veto power. Most states have a plural executive, meaning that the governor is not the only government official in the state responsible for its executive branch. In these states, executive power is distributed among other officials elected by people independently of the governor, such as lieutenant governor, attorney general, comptroller, secretary of state, and others. Elections of officials in the United States are generally for a fixed term of office. Of the constitutions of 19 states allow for citizens to remove and replace elected public officials before the end of their terms of office through a recall election. Each state follows its own procedure for recall election and sets its own restrictions on how often and how soon after a general election they may be held. In all states, the legislatures can remove the state executive branch officials, including governors, who have committed serious abuse of their power from office. The process of doing so includes impeachment, the bringing of specific charges, and a trial in which legislature can act as jury. Legislative. The primary procedure of state legislature are to enact state law and appropriate money for the administration of public policy in all states. In all states, if the governor vetoes a bill or a portion of one, it can still become law. If the legislature overrides the vetoes, repassed the bill, which in most states require a two-thirds vote in each chamber. In 49 of 50 states, the legislature consists of two chambers, a lower house, variously called the House of Representatives, State Assembly, General Assembly, or House of Delegates, and a small upper house in all states called Senate. The exceptions is the unicameral Nebraska legislature, which has only a single chamber. Most states have a part-time legislature, traditionally called citizen legislature. 10 states legislatures are considered full-time. These bodies are more similar to the USA Congress than are the other. Members of each state legislature are chosen by direct election. In Baker v. Curry, 1962, and Reynolds v. Sims, 1964, the USA Supreme Court held that all states are required to elect their legislatures in such a way as to afford each citizen the same degree of representation. The one person, one vote stands. In practice, most states elect legislature from single-member districts, each of which has approximately the same population. Some states, such as Maryland and Vermont, divide the states into single and multiple member districts. In each case, multiple member districts must have proportionate large population, e.g., a district elect two representatives must have approximately twice the population of a district electing just one. The voting systems used across the nation are first past the post in a single-member district and multiple non-transferable vote in multiple-member district. In 2013, there were a total of 7,383 legislators in 50 states' legislative bodies. They earned from $0 annually, New Mexico, to 90,526 USD in California. There were various per dime and mortgage compulsion. Judiciary. States can also organize their judicial system differently from federal judiciary, as long as they protect the federal constitutional right of the citizen to procedural due process. Most have a trial level court, generally called a district court, superior court, and or circuit court, a first level appellate court, generally called a court of appeal or appeals, and the Supreme Court. Oklahoma and Texas have separated the highest court from criminal appeals. Uniquely, in New York State, the trial court is called the Supreme Court. Appeals goes the first to the Supreme Court's appellate division, and from there to the Court of Appeal. State court system exercise broad plenary and general jurisdiction in contrast to the federal courts. which are courts of limited jurisdictions. The overwhelming majority of criminal and civil cases in the United States are heard in state court each year. Slowly, roughly 30 million new cases are filed in state court, and the total number of judges across all state courts is about 30,000. From comparison, 1 million new cases are filed each year in federal courts, which have about 1,700 judges. Most states base their legal system on English common law, with substantial indigenous changes and the incorporation of certain civil law innovations, with the notable exception of Louisiana, a former French colony, which drew large part of legal system from French civil law. Only a few states choose to have the judge on the state court serve for life terms. In most states, the judge includes the justice of highest court in the state, are either elected or appointed from terms of limited number of years, and are usually eligible for re-election or reappointment. Unitarism. All states are unitary states, no federation or aggregates of local governments. Local governments within them are created by and exist by virtue of state law, and local governments within each state are subject to the central authority of that particular state. State governments commonly delegate some authority to local unit and channel policy decisions down to them for implementation. In a few states, local units of government are permitted a degree of home rule over various matters. The prevailing legal theory of state preeminence over local governments, referred to as Dillon's law, holds that a municipal corporation possesses and can exercise the following powers and no other. First, those granted in express words. Second, those mainly implies or necessarily incident to powers expressly granted. Third, those absolutely essential to the declared object and purpose of cooperation, not simply convenient but indispensable. Fourth, any fair doubt as existence of power is resolved by the court against the corporation, against the existence of powers. Each state defines by itself what power is. It will allow local governments. Generally, four categories of powers may be given to local jurisdictions: structural power to choose the form of government, charter and enact charter revision; functional power to exercise local self-government in a broad and limited manner; fiscal authority to determine revenue sources, set tax rates, borrow funds, and other related financial activities; personal authority to set up employment rules, remuneration rates, employment conditions, and collective bargaining. Relationships. Interstate. Each state admitted to the Union by Congress since 1789 has entered it on an equal footing with original state in all respects. With the growth of state rights advocacy, during the antebellum period, the Supreme Court asserted in the lesson of Pollard v. Hagen 1845 that the Constitution mandated admission of new states on the basis of equality. With the consent of Congress, states may enter into interstate compacts. Agreements between two or three states compacts are frequently used to manage a shared resource such as transportation, infrastructure, or water rights. Under Article 4 of Constitution, which outlines the relationship between states, each state is required to give full face and credit to the acts of each other legislature and courts, which is generally held to include the recognition of most contracts and criminal judgments. And before 1865, slavery status. Under the extradition clause, a state must extradite people located where they have freed charge of treason, felony, or other crime in other state if the other state so demands. The principle of hot pursuit of a presumed felon and arrested by the law officer of one state in another state are often permitted by a state. The full faith and credit expectation does have exceptions. Some legal arrangements, such as professional, residential, and marriages, may be state-specific, and until recent states have been found have not been found by the courts to be required to honor such agreements from other states. Such legal acts are nevertheless often recognized state to state according to the common practice of comity. States are prohibited from discrimination against citizens of other states with respect to their basic rights under the privilege of immunity clause. Within the federal government, under Article 4, each state is granted a form of government that is grounded in republican principles, such as consent of governed. This guarantee has long been at the forefront of debate about the rights of citizens vis-à-vis the government. States are also granted protection from invasion and upon the application of state legislature or executive if the legislature cannot be convened from the most violence. This provision was discussed during 1967. It was riot but was not invoked. The Supremacy Clause, Article 4, Clause 2, establishes that the Constitution, federal laws may, pursuant to it, and treaties made under its authority, constitutes the supreme law of the land. It provides the state courts are bound by the supreme law in case of conflicts between federal and state law. The federal law must be applied. Even state constitutions are subordinate to federal law. States' rights are understood mainly with reference to the 10th Amendment. The Constitution delegates some power to the national government and it forbids some powers to the state. The 10th Amendment reserves all other powers to the state or to the people. Powers of USA Congress and enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. For example, the power to declare war, make treaty, making threats in one power forbidden to the states, being listed among other such a power in Article 1, Section 10. Among the Article 1 enumerated power of Congress is the power to regulate commerce since the early 20th century, the Supreme Court's interpretation of this Commerce Clause has over time greatly expanded the scope of federal power at the expense of power formerly considered purely state matter. The Cambridge Economic History of the United States says, on the whole, especially after the mid 1880s, the court construed the Commerce Clause in favor of increased federal power. In 1941, the Supreme Court in USA v. Darby upheld the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, holding that Congress have the power under the Commerce Clause to regulate employment conditions. Then, 1 year later, in Wickard v. Philbin, the court expanded the federal power to regulate the economy by holding the federal authority under the Commerce Clause extends to activities which may appear to be local in nature but in reality affect the international economy and are therefore of national concern. For example, Congress can regulate railway traffic across state lines, but it may also regulate rail traffic solely within a state based on the reality that interstate traffic rules traffic still affects interstate commerce. Through such a decision, agreed law Professor David Ford, the court turned the commerce power into the equivalent of general legislatory power and undid the framer original structure of limited and delegated power. Subsequently, Congress invoked the Commerce Clause to expand federal criminal legislation as well as for social reform such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, only within the past couple of decades, through decision in cases such as those in USA versus Lopez in 1995 and USA versus Morrison 2000, has the court tried to limit the Commerce Clause power of Congress. Another enumerated congressional power is its taxing and spending power. An example of this is the system of federal aid for highways, which includes the interstate highway system. The system is mandated and largely funded by federal government and serves that the interest of the state. For threatening to withdraw federal highway funds, Congress have been able to pressure states' legislature to pass via laws. An example of nationwide legal drinking age of 21 enacted by each state brought about by the National Minimum Drinking Age Act. Although some objected that this infringes on states' rights, the Supreme Court upheld the practice as permissible using the constitutional spending clause in South Dakota versus Dory 483 USA 203 in 1987, as prescribed by Article 1 of Constitution, which establishes the U.S. Congress. Each state is represented in the Senate, irrespective of population size, by 2 senators, and each is granted at least one representative in the House. Both senators and representatives are chosen in direct popular elections in the various states. Prior to 1913, senators were elected by state legislature. These are presently 100 senators who are elected at large to staggered terms of 6 years, with one-third of them being chosen every 2 years. Representatives are elected at large for or from single-member districts to terms of 2 years, not staggered. The size of the House presently 435 voting members is set to federal statute. Seats in the House are distributed among the states in proportion to the most recent constitutional mandated decennial census. The borders of these districts are established by states individually through a process called redistricting, and with each state or districts are required to have approximately equal population. Citizens in each state plus those in the District of Columbia re-elect the president and the vice president. When casting ballot in presidential election, they are voting for presidential electors, who then use procedures provided in 12th Amendment elect the president and the vice president. There are 538 electors for the most recent presidential elections in 2020. The allocations of electoral votes was based on 2010 census. Each state is entitled to a number of electors equal to the total number of representatives and senators from the state. The District of Columbia is entitled to 3 electors. While the Constitution does set parameters for the elections of federal officials, state laws, not federal, regulates most aspects of elections in the USA, including primaries, the eligibility of voters beyond the base constitutional definition, the running of each state's electoral college, as well as running the state and local elections. All elections, federal, state, and local, are administered by individual states, and some voting rules and procedures may differ among them. Article 5 of Constitution accords states a key role in the process of amending the USA Constitution. Amendments may be proposed either by Congress within two-thirds vote in both the House and the Senate, or by constitutional convention called for by two-thirds or Senate legislature. To become a part of constitution amendment, an amendment must be ratified by either, as determined by Congress, the legislature of three-quarters of states, or states ratifying convention in three-quarters of the states. The votes in each state to either ratify or reject the proposed amendment carries equal weight regardless of state population or length of time in union. With other countries, USA states are not sovereign in Westphalian sense in international laws, which says that each state has sovereignty over its territory and domestic affairs to the exclusion of external powers. On the principles of non-interference in other states' domestic affairs, and that each state, no matter how large or small, is equal in international laws. Additionally, the 50 USA states do not possess international legal sovereignty, meaning that they are not recognized by other sovereign states such as, for example, France, Germany, or UK. The federal government is responsible for international relations, but states and local government leaders do occasionally travel to other countries and form economic and cultural relationship. Admission into Union. Article 4 also grants the Congress the authority to admit new states into Union. Since establishment of United States in 1776, the member of states are expanding from origin 13 to 50. Each state has been admitted on an equal footing with the existing state. Article 4 also forbids the creation of new states from parts of existing states without the consent of both the affected states and the Congress. This caveat was designed to give East states that still had West land claim, including Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia, to have a veto over whether their western countries could become states, and has served this same function since. Whenever it proposed to partition an existing state or states in order that a region within might either join either state or create a new state has come before Congress. Most of states admitted to the Union after original 13 were formed from organized territory established and governed by Congress in accord within plenary power under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. The outline of this process was established by Northwest Ordinance in 1787, which predates the ratification of Constitution. In some cases, an entire territory had become state in other parts. In other, some parts of territory has. When the people of a territory makes their desire to statehood known to federal government, the Congress may pass an enabling act authorizing the people of that territory to organize a constitutional convention to write a state constitution as a step towards admission to the Union. Each act detailed the mechanism by which the territory will be admitted as a state following ratification of their constitution and the election of state office. Although the use of an enabling act is traditional historical practice, a number of territories have drafted a constitution for submission to Congress absent an enabling act and were subsequently admitted upon acceptance of that constitution and meeting an additional congressional stipulation. Congress have also admitted that territory as a state. In addition to original 13, subsequent states were never an organized territory of the federal government or part of one. Or a part of one. Before being admitted to the Union, 3 were set off from a already existing state. 2 entered the Union after having been sovereign states, and 1 was established from an organized territory. California, 1850, from land ceded to the United States by Mexico in 1848 under the terms of Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, Kentucky, 1792, from Virginia, District of Kentucky, Maina, 1820 from Massachusetts, Texas 1845, previously the Republic of Texas, Vermont 1791, previously from Vermont Republic, West Virginia 1863 from Virginia. Congress is under no obligation to admit states even in those areas whose population expresses a desire to statehood. Such has been a case numerous times during the nation's history. In one instance, Mormon pioneers in Salt Lake City sought to establish the state of Deseret in 1848. It existed for slightly over 2 years and was never approved by United Congress. In another, leaders of five civilized tribes in Indian Territory proposed to establish a state of Square in 1905. As a means to retain control of their lands, the proposed constitution ultimately failed in the USA Congress. Instead, the Indian Territory and Oklahoma Territory were both incorporated into a new state of Oklahoma in 1907. The first instance occurred while the nation still operated under the Articles of Conference. The state of Franklin existed for several years, not long after the end of the American Revolution, but was never recognized by Confederation Congress, which ultimately recognized North Carolina's claim of sovereignty over the area. The territory comprised Franklin later became part of Southwest Territory and ultimately of the state of Tennessee. Additionally, the entry of several states into union was denied due to the distinctive conflicting factors, among them Michigan Territory, which petitioned Congress for statehood in 1835, was not admitted to the Union until 1837 due to the boundary dispute with the adjoint state of Ohio. The Republic of Texas requested annexation to the United States in 1837, but feared about potential conflict with Mexico delayed the admission of Texas for 9 years. Statehood for Kansas Territory was held up for several years, 1854 to 1861, due to the series of internal violent conflicts involving anti-slavery and pro-slavery factions. West Virginia's bid for statehood was also delayed over slavery and was settled when it agreed to adopt a gradual abolition plan. Proposed additions: Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, an incorporated USA territory, referred to itself as Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, is English version of its constitution and as Estadio Libre Asociado, literally associated free state in Spanish version. As with all USA territories, its residents do not have full representation in the United States Congress. Puerto Rico has limited representation in the USA House of Representatives in the form of resident commissioner, a delegate with limited voting rights in the Committee of Whole House of State of Union, but no voting right otherwise. A non-binding referendum of statehood, independence, or a new option for associated territory different from current status was held on November 6, 2012. 61% of voters chose the statehood option, while one-third of ballots were submitted blank. On November 2012, the Legislative Assembly of Puerto Rico enacted a concurrent resolution requesting the President and Congress of the United States to respond to the referendum of people of Puerto Rico held on November 6, 2012, to end its current form of territorial status and began to proceed to admit Puerto Rico as a state. Another status referendum was held on June 11, 2017, in which 97% of voters chose statehood. Turnout was low as only 23% of voters went to the polls, with advocates of both continued territory status and independent urging voters to boycott it. On June 27, 2018, the H.R. 6246 Act was introduced on the USA House with the purpose of responding to and complying with the domestic will of United States citizens residing in Puerto Rico as expressed in plebiscites held on November 6, 2012 and June 11, 2017, by setting forth the terms of admission of the territory of Puerto Rico as a state of union. The Act has 37 original co-sponsors between Republicans and Democrats in USA House of Representatives. On November 3, 2020, Puerto Rico held another referendum. In a non-binding referendum, Puerto Ricans voted in favor of becoming a state. They also voted for a pro-statehood Governor Pedro Pierluisi. Washington, D.C. The intention of Founding Father was that the United States capital would be at a neutral site, not governing favor to any existing state. As a result, the District of Columbia was created in 1900 to serve as a seat of government. As it is not a state, the district does not have representative in the Senate and has a non-voting delegate in the House. Neither does it has the sovereign elected government. Additionally, before ratification of 23rd Amendment in 1961, district citizens do not get the right to vote in a presidential election. The strong majority of residents of districts support statehood of the same form for the jurisdiction, either statehood for the whole district or for inhabited parts, with the remainder remaining under federal jurisdiction. In November 2016, Washington, D.C. residents voted in a statehood referendum in which 86% of the voters supported statehood. For Washington, D.C., for statehood to be achieved, it must be approved by Congress. Secession from Union. The Constitution is silent on issue of whether a state can secede from the Union. The predecessor, the Article of Confederation, stated that the United States shall be perpetual. The question of whether or not individual states held the unilateral rights to secession was a passionately debated feature of nation's political discourage from early in its history and remained a difficult and divisive topic until American Civil War. In 1860 and 1861, 11 southern states each declared secession from the United States and joined to form a Confederate State of Africa. Following the defeat of Confederate forces by Union armies in 1865, those states were brought back into union during the ensuing Reconstruction era. The federal government never recognized the Soviet of CSA nor the validity of ordinance of secession adopted by seceding states. Following the war, the United States Supreme Court in Texas versus White, 1869, held the states did not have the right to succeed and that any act of secession was legally void, drawing a preamble to the Constitution which states that the Constitution was intended to form a more perfect union and speak of people of the United States in fact as a single body politic, as well as the language of the Article of Association. The Supreme Court maintained that states did not have a right to secede. The court reference in the same decision to the possibility of such a change occurring through revolution, although consent of the state essentially means that this decision holds that no state has a right to unilaterally decide to leave the union. Name origin. The 50 states have taken their names from the wide variety of language. 24 states named originated from Native American language. Of those, 8 are from Algonquian language, 7 are from Creole language, 3 are from Iroquois language, and 1 is from Uto Azteca language, and 5 other are from indigenous language. Hawaii name is derived from Polynesian Aryan language. Of the remaining names, 22 are from European language, 7 are from Latin, many Latin form of English name, and rest are from English, Spanish, and French. 11 states named after individual people include 7 names of royal and 1 named from King, President of the United States. The origin of 6 states names are known and disputed. 7 of states that derived their name from names used for native people have retained their plural ending of S. Geography. Borders. The borders of 13 origin states were largely determined by colonial charters. The western boundary were subsequently modified as states ceded their western land claim to the federal government during 1780s and 1790s. Many states' borders beyond those of the original 13 were set by Congress at its created territory, divided them, and over time created states within them. Territorial and new states line often followed various geographic features such as rivers, mountains, range peaks, and were influenced by settlement or transportation pattern at various times. National border with territories formerly controlled by other countries: British North America, New France, New Spain, including Spanish Florida, and Russian America, became institutionalized as a border of US states in West. Relatively arbitrary straight lines followed latitudes and longitudes often prevailed due to the sparseness of settled west of Mississippi River. Once established, most states' borders have, with few exceptions, been generally stable. Only 2 states, Missouri and Nevada, grows appreciably after statehood. Several other origin states seceded land over a several years period to the federal government, which in turn became Northwest Territory, Southwest Territory, and Mississippi Territory in 1791. Maryland and Virginia succeeded to create the District of Columbia. Virginia portion was returned in 1847. In 1850, Texas ceded a large swath of land to the federal government. Additionally, Massachusetts and Virginia, on two occasions, have lost lands in each instance to form a new state. There have been numerous other minor adjustments to the state's boundary over the years due to the improved survey, resolution of ambiguous or dispute boundary definition, or minor mutual agreement boundary adjusted by administrative convenience or other purpose. Occasionally, either Congress or U.S. Supreme Court have been settled state border disputes. One notable example is the case of New Jersey versus New York, in which New Jersey won roughly 90% of its island from New York in 1998. Once a territory is admitted by Congress as a state of the Union, the state must consent to any changes pertaining to the jurisdiction of the state and the Congress. The only potential violation of this occurred when the legislature of Virginia declared secession of Virginia from the United States at the start of American Civil War, and newly formed alternative Virginia legislature recognized by federal government consented to have West Virginia seceded from Virginia. Regional grouping. States may be grouped in a region. There are many variations and possible grouping. Many are defined in a law or regulation of federal government. For example, the United States Census Bureau defined four statistical regions with 9 divisions. The Census Bureau regional definition, Northeast, Middle West, South, and West, is widely used for data collection and analysis and is the most common used classification system. Other multiple states regions are unofficial and defined by geography or cultural affinity rather than by state line. Thank you very much for being with us on Asha. So this video was talking about USA states origin and how they make it to become one union. Thank you very much. See you in another video.